Hello, everybody. Welcome back to ELF Live Thursday night show. I am here with the one and only Matt Bressington. I am your co-host, Nick Alfieri. We have a lot of problems here in Schwäbisch Hall, Germany. The internet is out throughout the entire town, so if I cut out, please forgive me, Matt. You'll take over the reins. I hope to not abandon you. But everybody in the chat, welcome to ELF Live for Week 9. How's it going, brother?
I mean, pretty good until the internet issues came around, and I've been trying to panic write some stuff just in case anything comes up. Just be cracking stand-up jokes midway through the stream.
There you go. I'll try to not abandon you. I purchased a hotspot that's costing me about $8 a minute. So this is a really expensive show, but for European League of Football, it is worth it. Hello, everybody in the chat. So what we got today is we're going to go to our signing center, some kind of last-minute signings as the deadline is next week. Going to touch on some exciting news. The international game is in the horizon. Then we're going to do a little bit of a news segment. Team needs. As we enter into the second half of the season, Matt, our expert, is going to kind of touch on what some of the top teams in the league need in terms of signings as we head into the back half of the season and the playoff push. Another new segment, Nick's Conspiracy Corner. Okay, I've got a little bit of a theory or kind of stuff that I want to talk about, and I'm going to maybe go off on a tangent. You guys are going to all think I'm even more crazy than you think already. And then another new segment, Matt's Fantasy Tips. We're just dripping out new segments today, Matt. And then that will probably be the show. We got a lot going on, so everybody in the chat, welcome. And Matt, what do you think? Should we just pop on into Signing Center right now?
Go straight for it. It's been quite a week on the signings, but definitely some key ones for sure.
Absolutely. So, Maxie, I think you can pop up that first graphic. This was a big one. Some kind of devastating news. Jarvis McLemore, sort of an ELF favorite. He is out, placed on IR. Matt, what are your thoughts on this one?
Devastating. I love Jarvis. I think he's one of my most fun receivers just to watch in the league. He's such a good player with the ball, and obviously he was here last year, so we've all become fans of him over the last year and a half. So it's gutting to see him, especially just before the game. We didn't even get to see him in the game, which is it's a heartbreaking one. It's one of the ones you never wish on any player.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a brutal injury. So Jarvis, we wish you well, brother. Get well soon. We hope to see you back on the field next year. But of course, the Sea Devils had to sign a new wide receiver, and they brought in Torrin Justice. Matt, you got any details or thoughts on this new signing for Hamburg?
I do indeed. Well, first of all, he goes into our all ELF name team alongside Ivory Web 3. Both of those guys can kind of fight out for whoever's the best. But he's a LFA All Pro. He's a legend in Mexico. He's got a long frame. He's a sideline receiver. He can really stretch the field. I have doubts in his separation and his route tree running. He does have good routes. They're just not as sharp and elite level as you would think. He's kind of for me, his comparison is Hazleton as a surge who just left. I think they're very comparable receivers. The interesting thing, he's a very different receiver to Jarvis. Jarvis is a catch and run kind of guy. This guy is going to be more of a deep threat. He has amazing, spectacular catch. I mean, to use a Madden term, but he can catch a ball over anyone in any kind of situation he finds himself in. If you watch some of the tape, he's in some kind of crazy figure of fours, and he's still pulling off crazy catches. But it's a obvious transition. I think Fulford is going to have to adjust to have, he didn't have Jarvis in the last game, but it's certainly different to what we were expecting him to have. And it could open up some doors. It does give them a deep threat, which they've been lacking since, Landstrom had that injury. They haven't had someone to construct the field. I think Justice might be able to bring that to him. He's 6'3", he's 200 pounds, he's big, he's lean. So let's see how he does.
I like the spectacular catch grade there. We got to do that. We got to break down a bunch of players with their Madden scores. Not to get too far off topic, Matt, who else in the league, what other wide receiver would you give a high spectacular catch score to? Anybody that comes to mind? Chad, you guys too, if anybody comes to your mind.
That's a great question. Oh, I mean, let me think. I mean, Markel is probably a guy that comes to mind most of all. But I really like last year. I like Josh Johnson, who was at the Barcelona Dragons last season. That's kind of me just picking at some random players from the last season. Terron Robinson is another legend who has great catch and traffic. There's a lot of them, but I think those two will be the guys that come to mind. Hazelton was really good this year as well, and he's been excellent while he was on the field. I think those are my my main dudes. Someone in the league this year would be Michael, and then last year I liked Josh Johnson and I liked Tyrone Robinson. So that's my 3 guys.
I like that. Spectacular catch. That's a spectacular thing to judge. And SH in the chat says Jordan Bua. Yes. Alex, the man, says Darian Chaffin. Oh, that's true. He was pretty clutch, especially in that game against the Ravens on those 4th downs. That was pretty damn spectacular. All right, so we went down a spectacular catch rabbit hole right there. Always a good rabbit hole to go down, though. Back to the Hamburg Sea Devils and signings. 2 other American imports out. Lee Pitts out as well, placed on IR, as well as Caleb Mills. Matt, what happens in Hamburg? They just get hit with just an absolute Northern Germany curse.
Yeah, brutal. Have 3 A's on IR at once, and then the other A is coming off of a 1 week of being on the team. It's a new look Hamburg team. It really is. Like this is not the same team as it was 2 weeks ago. Most of the team has changed. Like it's insane. Both of those guys are going to be missed. Pitts has dealt with injuries in his ELF career. He was obviously on Vorslav last year and got injured then. Mills did a good job in coming in this season as his ELF debut. There's square offs with Magic, which were very entertaining, but both of them going down at the same time is comically awful timing, to steal one of your phrases.
Yeah, comically awful indeed. So very unfortunate for Hamburg. Yeah, that's obviously if you're kind of new to the league, you get 4 American imports, 4 A's, and Hamburg lost 3 of them in 1 week. Very, very unfortunate. But they have brought in a couple new guys to replace the injured players. We've got Brandon Richard, the DB, as well as Nazir Strater, the former Helvetic mercenary. Matt, what are your thoughts on these guys? I guess let's start with Brandon Richard. Maxie, sorry, making you go back and forth on the graphics. Start with Brandon.
I mean, he's from University of Incarnate Word, so it's a D1 program. He was a grad student. He played a ton of games in university, so he has that D1 experience. He's scrappy. He's got great motor. He really does play to the echo, the whistle, which I like about him. His footwork and sharpness as like a coverage safety, I don't think is elite level. I think they could take a step up in terms of if they're expecting him to come into the slot, because he does play in the box a lot. He's coming off of angles. He's sending pressure. If they want him to be covering in the box, I'd like to see a bit more sharpness on his breaks and some of his trigger releases. Like he'll gain depth if he doesn't necessarily need to, and lose a step when coming downfield. But he is mostly a box guy, which is fine. If you're going to be acting on that. My thing is, though, with Strater, they're very similar players. And that's going to be confusing for me because they both kind of play similar roles. They're both physical, both tough, both mentality is a big thing with both of them, as I can get from the tape. Just saw Alex's chat. My apologies. They're very, very strong tacklers. So I think it could be both of them imposing their will on the offenses, and it could be a very fun, high-octane defense, or it could be 2 people trying to fit into the same position and one of them having to be forced into something they're not very comfortable with. So it's an interesting dichotomy, and I'm very intrigued to see how they kind of deal with that.
Yeah, we will see how that dynamic goes. And in the chat, SH says, Sea Devils are just tanking for better draft picks. And then we got the man, Jamal, Athletes Forum. Someone said mercenaries. We did say mercenaries. The man, hey, Matt, is this going to be another kind of Ken Hike Jr. situation where the mercenaries let go of a very talented defensive back and he goes and performs well with another team? Do you think that this is the mercenaries are going to be kicking themselves about this one?
I mean, potentially. I have Ken as a higher rated defensive back than Strater. I do like Strater, but Ken is an all-pro in this league, so it's kind of different levels. But Strater could definitely make an impact. He is kind of going from a bad mercenaries team to a not great Hamburg team, but he's also got to deal with the West. So, rather than the Central. So he is definitely going to take a step up in competition. He might be with a however you feel about their defense. He might be joining a better defense with a bit more support around him. So we'll see how he does. I think that he can definitely be an important player on this defense. He does kind of match their attitude quite well. So yeah. I do quite like the scheme fit in terms of a mental place and as well as a football play style.
Okay, there we go. So kind of a whole overhaul, new look for the Hamburg Sea Devils. Some injured guys out, some new players in, and we'll see how that affects the team in the second half of the season. All right, so that's going to be our signing center. Next week, we'll kind of touch on just the final signings because we'll be hitting the signing deadline. And a little bit later in this show, Matt, I'm going to pick your brain about kind of the top 5 teams and who you think or what sort of pieces you think they need to go after or anything that would help them in the second half of the season. Now, just wanted to touch on the fact that we've got the ELF International game. It was announced a few months ago, very exciting, in Šibenik, Croatia. Max, you want to throw up that beautiful graphic that you made here? And it's, of course, a showdown of some Western teams. Is that playing? Is that audio playing? I'll stop talking while that's playing just in case. We're professionals, Matt. Okay, no audio. All right, back to me talking. Hamburg Sea Devils versus the Madrid Bravos, a Western Conference showdown. That's going to be August 24th, week 14. Going to be a very cool event just for the league in general. And, not we'll see. Actually, we just talked about the Hamburg Sea Devils. They didn't have a great first half of the season, whereas the Madrid Bravos did. Maybe this new overhaul turns that into a very competitive game. That would honestly be ideal for the league, but that's going to be exciting. We just want to remind everybody there, if anyone's interested, make a trip out of it. Head on down to Croatia and watch the first ever ELF International game. All right, Matt, we touched on it, man. Team needs. We are just about to hit the signing deadline. We've seen a lot of interesting signings, releases, sort of back and forth throughout this first half of the league. Now, and everyone in the chat here, if you've got any opinions, lay them on us. We always want your opinions. We're going to talk about what we think the kind of top 5 teams would benefit from if they were to go after any final last minute signings. And if we're going on kind of top 5, what do you think, Matt? Should we start with Madrid Bravos?
Oh, that's exactly the team I was thinking as well. That's good time. I like that.
Right.
We're same wavelength. We spend too much time together on calls
We're on
these
the
days.
same wavelength. All right, Matt. So talk to me about this Western Conference squad. They're sitting at 5-1 right now. Have had a very, very promising first half of the season. First-year franchise. What do you think? Heading into the signing deadline, what are their needs on this roster?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious thing that people are going to talk about is the Barcelona releases, right? They've released a bunch of their players. They've had the option to be released, and some of those are going to fall in Madrid. Ivanov, the Spanish receiver, although his name is Ivanov, he has heritage in Russia and in the east of Europe, but he's a good receiver. I like him. I think he adds to that receiver room. I would like to see maybe another one because we haven't seen someone really burst out in a Madrid Bravos as a secondary receiver. We've had William Patterson. We know what he's at. We've got Sinerda, who's a great tight end, who's been able to be a bit of an outlet passer. We haven't had Madden Siestro or Flores Calderon or not Flores Calderon, sorry, he's in Milan. We haven't seen Mario Flores, that's what I meant.
Yeah. Right.
Burst out as a number 2 option on this offense. So I think that could be something that they look for. I think their defense is spectacular, but maybe a bit more help for Dwayne as well. You know, they do have an influx of potential Spanish backs. You don't want Dwayne getting injured and carrying that whole team into the playoffs because his back's going to get hurt if he's carrying all of them. Me and you and Silas, we talked about how they need depth because unlike the German teams, unlike the Parisians, they don't have as much talent in the country, so they might struggle with depth. So I think overall on the offensive line and just building more players that are Spanish that can add on a rotationary level is probably what I would add to the Bravos team.
Oh boy, Matt, damn. These teams need to hire you as an independent consultant to get a little roster advice right there. We'll make you a website. Hey, it's just all right. I'm looking here at Sports Metrics, and it currently says that the Madrid Bravos are 17th in kick return and 16th in punt return. That puts them at the absolute bottom of the league. Are you surprised by this? Is there anybody? Don't you think? I don't know. I thought that maybe they throw Willie Patterson back there and have some success.
Yeah, I thought so too. Which is a surprise. You know, you'd expect someone like Willie to be able to be explosive on punt returns. They don't have. It sounds people are going to get on me about this one. They're not a massively fast team. Like they do have speed in certain positions, but Sinerda, great tight end, isn't a necessarily fast guy. Their guys in the line are good, very strong, but when it comes to pulling and getting out into open space, they're not massively fast guys. Obi, great running back, amazing, powerful, isn't going to be like blazing a Dawson Dale's 4.2. Like they do have speed, but they're not like they don't have elite speedsters. So I think that's has been a factor on special teams. Willie's obviously been fantastic for them as a receiver, but hasn't been able to really extend onto the onto the return game. He's got a punt return touchdown, which is good, but he also hasn't taken that many kickoffs. He's only taken 4. Like it's not very many. So I think it's got to be a factor into. They haven't had as many kickoffs as other teams.
I love that we have Dawson Dale as our reference for fast elite speed. If anyone's missing out on that inside joke, we are referencing the shovel pass that he took a couple of weeks ago to the house, and we said, oh, he looks like he's got 4.2 speed. So if we talk about speed on this show, we talk about Dawson Dales. He's the sort of the benchmark for speed in this league. All right, there we go, Matt. I like that. Now, if we're going off of, I was trying to pull up your power rankings, actually.
I appreciate it.
Because it would go kind of in reverse order from your power rankings.
I'm going off the dome. You can hit me with any team, and I've got knowledge.
Yeah, I know. That's why it's good to pick your brain on this. But who do you have at 4th? My internet, like I said, is very, very slow. Do you have Paris at 4th, or do you have?
There are 2. I think I have Vienna. We'll go with Vienna. I've got Vienna. Hold on. We'll go with Vienna.
Yep, you got Vienna. I just pulled it up. It finally worked. All right, let's talk Vienna, Matt.
Let's talk Vienna. So
let's go Vienna.
They have MVP Ben, as I'm sure Alex is going to mention.
And Alex is in the chat.
Yeah, Alex is present, so I'm sure he's gonna chime in with his MVP chance. And he's been good. He has been good. They have Kerry, who's a great running back. They have fantastic receiver room. Currently, just in the process of doing Torres video, and he looks like he could potentially be one of the best rookies we've ever seen at position. So he's on outstanding. They have a great offense. I have no quarrels with their offensive ranks. They're 3rd for rushing. They have number 1 for passing, number 1 for yards, 3rd for scoring. So no problems. Defensively, they've taken a little bit of a step down recently. Most of that is injuries. Right, yeah. They've had a ton. They've had Xavier Edwards, Hunter Nichols. I'm a massive Hunter Nichols fan. For those that don't know how much of a fan I am of him, but they've had those injuries, and that's been a big thing for them coming into the second half of the year. They've got Ken Hike. We saw in the last game though they had some busted coverages because of just getting everyone onto the same page. I think as a defense, and that's the thing that is their team need. That team coercion, getting everyone on the same page, and the injury crisis is, hopefully will let up on them. But they do have an amazing team. I think Talitza is probably one of my favorite new players into the league. Lalo was massively impressed. Even Benjamin Straight has also been hurt. So just the big thing for them is just, man, let's just keep people healthy. Like even Hunter Nichols only played 5 games. They've got Morales who's just come in as well, and he's looks to be a decent player, but they just need to get that rolling. I think they should be fine. It's a team that has got an easier conference, so they should be able to nurse these players back gradually and coast into the playoffs.
Absolutely. So, if I'm understanding your analysis correctly, you're saying that the Vikings' need is actually in the health and physio department, the training department, to get these boys back out on the field. No, I'm just kidding. Team. I know that they're all. Vienna is one of the most professional organizations. They got a great training staff. I'm just, there. But I like that analysis a lot, and we saw that last week in their game against the Mercenaries that we know Jamal was thrilled about. But yeah, we saw some of those holes. We saw some of those busted coverages, kind of some of those younger guys, backup guys being in there. And but when they have kind of their 18 back there, they are performing a lot differently. So I like that a lot. I agree with your analysis right there on the needs. Yeah, and then what do we got in the chat? That's a tough name. Thomas, the Vikings roster is far better than it was week 1. Yeah. What do you think about that, Matt?
I'm gonna go with. I don't know about that. I'm gonna go with no on that one.
Thomas, are you talking about like the roster from last week that played the Mercenaries? Because I think you might be on a bigger conspiracy than I'm about to be on a little bit later with that one.
Yeah, but hear me out, right? They've had people develop. They've had Torre. They've had Lianima. They've had Schultz. These are 3 receivers that developed. They've done well. And they've had the injuries, so I guess you could say that they're better in week 1, but they're coming in fresh in week one. It's kind of hard to be your worst, I
Right.
guess. But I get the point. But
Here in the
yeah, I
chat,
mean,
SH does say they did add Reese Horn. That is and I do
yes.
agree. I think that is a step up at the A wide receiver position. But they also don't have Jordan Bua, who was there week one. I don't know. Does that kind of, neutralize it? Who knows? Okay, but that's great. We'll move on. That's Vienna Vikings. We're moving on to your number 3 ranked team, and you and I can talk off camera about why you have the Stuttgart Surge ranked so low. Talk to me, Matt. What are the Stuttgart Surge's needs heading
I mean,
into the second half?
they were low because they nearly lost against the Raiders. If it wasn't for that pick six, then we might have been talking about the Raiders at number 3 rather than the Surge.
Oh,
But
man.
it was a fantastic game. That was a great game. But
So good.
callback, no issues. Riley is amazing. Running back, they think they need just their offensive line is amazing, but they've not opened as many holes in the run game as they have in the pass game. It's kind of like the reverse of the Fire. But the Fire have made amazing run game holes for Glenn, but the passing game has struggled a little, just not like a lot, but just a little bit. It's the same with the Surge Rush. Kandar has done well, but also isn't getting a crazy amount of carries compared to other starting running backs in this league. Kai Hunter is a good backup. They have had a couple fumbles each, but nothing like absurd. I would just maybe add a little bit more push and a little bit more power to that interior lines to open it up. But they do have a very good offensive line. Not saying they struggle to get offensive linemen because they've got a great team. Apart from that, they've got such a damn good receiver room. I mean, I could talk about it all day. Like, it's excellent. And even the players like Paul Stagwold, who I've talked about a bunch, have come in and done a good job as rotationary players. If I'm nitpicking, I might add another rotationary guy just to relieve some pressure on Yannick Meyer and Lewis Geyer as the guys, because they've just had a long stretch without having an American in. Maybe give them a little bit of rest time, but that's me being picky. Defensively, they've had injuries. They've had a bit of rotation. The Christian Tutt, who I was so excited about seeing, obviously he went down injured, which is a shame. They've had people come in, done a very good job. They are allowing a little bit. They're bending, don't break. So they're getting all the way down, and then they're making these huge plays. But they are allowing teams to move a little bit. They are allowing teams to get into the red zone, and they're not stopping the drives, nipping it in the bud as early as they potentially could. They've got Chris Azaria, obviously went out, which is a shame, and he's retired, I believe. But they do have there's not very many team needs in this like top 5.
Yeah.
Especially with these two teams that are undefeated and have barely even really had a lick, because we haven't seen much of them because they've only been playing 30 minutes of the games.
Exactly.
So it's kind of a tough one to make team needs for.
I think that the fact that they've only been playing, a lot of their starters have only been playing in the first half in a lot of these games, kind of was a little bit of a wake-up call in this last game against the Raiders. Like, oh, we got to play a full 4 quarters. And obviously they were able to come through and do it. But it is a factor when you're only playing one half of a lot of games. I thought that was an interesting point, and I like that, what you touched on with the they've got a very, very good offensive line. Very, very good. And Kandar's a great back. But they just have not been able to get it going as well as I anticipated they would, or a lot of people would anticipate they would have. I remember watching them against the Milano Seamen in person and being quite impressed with the Milano Seamen run defense against the Surge. You got to chalk a lot of that up to Zachary Blair for just being a machine. But I'm with you on that one. So we will see what the second half of the season looks like for the Stuttgart Surge, currently sitting at 6-0, top of the Central Conference. All right, our top 2 teams. Sorry, Matt's top 2 teams. I'm going
to edge it also. The Surge maybe need a little bit more pass rush, because only leader of their team only has 2 sacks, and they're playing some pretty bad teams. So I would kind of argue they need a little bit more pass rush as well.
That's a fair point right there. All right, you got number 2, Matt. The Paris Musketeers, the second-year franchise out of France. They're looking good. They have only 1 loss. What are your thoughts on their needs here?
In terms of needs, I mean, first of all, from a mental standpoint, they've got to kind of stop letting the momentum swings happen. I mean, this is less of a team need, it's a personal, but like they lost to Rank 5 with a big swing of play. They nearly lost to the Galaxy with a big swing of play. They nearly lost against who they played last week, Berlin, with a big swing of play. Yeah. So it's been A big one. I think they need more turnovers, especially with the picks. So Chandler Jones was leading them. He had 3. He's done. He's out. That's I'm devastated about that. Marcelo Beard is playing a lot more safety, which is fine because I think I have him graded as a zonal guy. I don't think he's an elite man. He's a great corner, but he's not necessarily an elite man coverage player. So having him in a zone is really good. I think he's got 2 interceptions and it's proven to be good. That's it. That's all the players that have an interception. So I'd like to see turning over the ball a little bit more defensively. I like the DB core, but it's just more of another thing that they just need to shore up rather than change it in personnel. Because I do like that DBs. And then kicking, they've missed some
Yep.
kicks, which
Yep.
it's not great. You could say that about half the teams, to be fair, about kicks. They're actually losing the turnover ratio, which is a surprise for a top 2 team, in my opinion.
Yeah.
To be losing the turnover ratio is quite different. They fumble the ball quite a bit.
That is, I mean, when you look, like, that is very often one of the most telling metrics for a football team if they're having a good season and getting wins or not. And for them to be sitting at 5-1 and to be negative in the turnover margin is kind of wild.
Yeah, I know, right? And then our offensive line, again, another good unit, but they're allowing a lot of pressure to Zach, especially in the last couple of games. Zach's been able to run around here, there, and everywhere. It's not as bad as it was last year, but it's something. Their running game, they aren't getting as much usage out of running backs. I think they potentially could. Augman's only got 54, and their second leading rusher is technically a running back, a linebacker. So think of how you will with that one. But Augman, 4 touchdowns. He's averaging 6.5 yards a carry. Like, could run the ball with him a little bit more. I think their offensive line is fantastic, but they've been susceptible to pass pressure. Like that when they have more than 4 guys, they kind of separate up and they kind of take one-on-one, and then they're allowing a little bit of pressure on the interior, which allows Zach to kind of run around. So their one's more like schematical and not schematical. I don't want to diss their scheme, but mentality of creating the turnovers and stopping these high blitzes rather than individual players.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. I like that a lot. And then we got in the chat, Alex Malchow, of course, also agrees they need a good kicker. And sorry, just to backtrack a little bit back to the Surge, because Alex had some good content in here in the chat. He said the Surge need WD-40 to knock off the rust.
Yes.
That's a great way of putting it. You know, that's kind of a tough thing when you've got some easier games or a stretch of easier games. And then in the chat also, D Falende Chocolate. I don't know. He says, what do you expect from Darrell Stewart Jr. for the rest of the season? He obviously was out with an injury. What does that say? The falling turtle. Thanks, Maxie. It's a little bit blurry on my screen. So the falling turtle. Darrell Stewart Jr. was a little bit quiet last week in his first game back against the Raiders. But I expect him to warm back up. He's got a great connection with Riley Hennessy. I expect him in the second half of the season to kind of catch his stride and be up there on par with the number of catches that Yannick Meyer and Louis Guy are getting. And I think he plays his best football in the biggest games, as we saw last year in the playoffs where he had an insane run. So that's kind of what I expect from Darrell Stewart Jr. Matt, you got any final thoughts on Stewart Jr. there?
Exactly.
Or on Paris?
Exactly the same. I think he's a great receiver. I think last week is what to get him on the field, shake a little bit of that rust off, as we talked about, and get more involved with, just on the field rather than getting game ready. But I think he'll probably ease back into that.
There we go. All right. Moving on to our final team of the Team Needs new segment, the number 1 ranked team, according to Matt Bressington.
Yes.
The Rhine Fire, and this is a team, obviously the reigning champion, who is absolutely dominating in one aspect of the game of football, the run game, Glenn Tunga. But the passing game has not been what it was last year. Matt, what are your thoughts on the Rhine Fire's needs?
And it's a big thing. They've been decimated at the receiver position with injuries. They've had a ton. I mean, McKnight got injured, and then he brought in Hexall, and then they've swapped it back out. But McKnight is still the leading receiver in his team by a mile. Harlan Quofi was out. Brian Winter, who was another player I was really excited to see, he's a D1 level receiver, and he got injured very early in the year, and he looked like he was having a great connection with Jadrian. They've had to get very deep into this offensive playbook bag for Raji and both Sven Berenbach to both have receiving touchdowns is it's different. So they've had to go very deep into their bag to like kind of, and Tony Anderson, so another player that's not usually pass catching, is had to get involved with the offense because of the absolute decimation of their receiver core. Adding some more Germans in, wherever you find them, would go a long way. I know it's obviously a lot easier said than done, but or speculation without it. But the receiver room would need to be beefed up. Maybe taking some guys from other places who's had a lot of releases, a lot of turnover. Maybe you find some hidden gems in those releases. Run game, I've got absolutely no quarrel with at all. Like, that's perfect. Don't touch it. Don't need to touch it. But as far as I was also expecting quite a lot more from that pass rush, and I'm going quite hard against a team that I thought was going to be that I've got as number one.
Yeah.
But I expected more from the pass rush. They've got 2 E's they had as a defensive lineman, and neither of them really got home. Aaron Doncourt has started to develop a lot more. So he's an ex-NFL guy, so we expect him to be good. But he's only just started getting kicked in. We saw it with Alessandro last year. It took him a while to get involved. And it's exactly the same thing we've had with Aaron Doncourt. So having more sacks would be a big improvement for them, I think. They do have a good amount of turnovers, but not like an elite level. Defensively, they do have obviously Williams, who's only one interception away from the all-time. I'm pretty positive. So he's done very well. Tony Anderson made that clutch play of the year at the end of the Paris game. So, and then Marlon has been such a good player for them. But there's been the receiver is the glaring need for the Ryan Fire, just due to the absolute calamity of injuries they've had at that position.
Brutal. Hey, we got a crazy stat here, and we might have to fact check this. This is from the man, Thomas Zenyi, who I'm sorry about your last name pronunciation. Ryan Fire have less passing yards than the Enthroners, and the Fire have played one more game. That's pretty damning for the passing game right now, at least statistically. We did see, though, last week, Jadrian had a perfect passer rating, 112 for 14, 6 touchdown passes in the first half. So, maybe we're starting to move in the right direction there. But yeah, you're right. They've just been absolutely killed by injuries, and it's tough, especially with the passing game. You got to get that rhythm. You got to get that connection quarterback to wide receiver, and to have kind of a big rotation there. That's, I think, been a huge factor in the first half of the season for the Ryan Fire. I like it, Matt. I think you gave some good advice to these teams. They should all listen and apply these changes so they can have a successful second half of the 2024 season.
There we go.
All right, guys, those are the team needs. Now we have a new segment here. It's kind of called Nalf's Conspiracy Corner. It's not gonna start off that conspiracy. It's just we might get to the conspiracy. Matt, I just want to talk to you about kind of playoff implications. So, Maxie, I'm sorry, I should have said this in pre-production, but if you have that playoff graphic, maybe throw that up. So we're just looking at the current playoff implications and the teams that are going to be in the conversation. So right now we've got the Madrid Bravos, the Paris Musketeers, Stuttgart Surge, the Raiders T-Roll. There it is. Vienna Vikings and the Rhine Fire. So that's our current playoff picture. And Matt, I just kind of want to have a conversation about how we think things could shake out going into the second half of this season. And the first one I want to look at is that number 6 position. Or is that number 6? Yep, the Raiders T-Roll. Right now, they're in there at that number 6 position. They're currently 5-3, but their biggest competition for getting that second place spot in the Central Conference and snagging a playoff spot is actually going to be the Munich Ravens, who are just at 3-3 right now. And if you just look at kind of statistics and wins, Munich Ravens are not really in the playoff conversation. But if you look at the second half of their season, who their remaining games are against, they play Helvetic, Milano, Prague, Barcelona, and then Helvetic again. Those are their next 5 games. Those are 5 wins. I think a lot of people would agree with that. They're going to have 5 wins in a row. And then they're going to have what is very possibly the game or regular season game of the year, playing the Raiders, because the way that the Raiders season shapes up for the second half, they're playing Helvetic, they're playing Surge, they're playing Milano, and they're playing the Ravens. They're either going to go 2-2 or 3-1 if we're just basing this off of kind of common sense expectations there. And if they lose to Munich, Maxi, correct me if I'm wrong, though. If they lose to Munich in week 14, then their head-to-head with the Munich Ravens is going to come into play. If they lose by more than 3 points, the Munich Ravens would sneak in there at that number 6 spot, claiming the 2nd seed in the Central Conference. Matt, do you think that this is possible? Or am I just going off on a crazy tangent here?
No, I think it's entirely possible. I mean, you read off the schedules. Munich do have the easiest strength of schedule, so you'd expect them to be up there. And Munich have been quieter at the start of the year, but they're definitely getting better. Like they've had improvements to receiver. Their defense is still top 3 in the league in terms of statistical. Their passing offense again there. Tommy was back, so I would dare say likely situation. Yeah.
Okay. Chad, if you got any thoughts on that, let us know here. So my big kind of conspiracy here is I think that the Madrid Bravos might be falling out of the playoff picture in the second half of the year. I know it sounds stupid right now. We're going to see this weekend how legit Madrid actually is when they play the Paris Musketeers. But, hold on one sec. From our number of wins, then win percentage, then point differential, then head-to-head. Okay, so that will it will kind of come down to Raiders versus Ravens. Yeah, the winner will go to the playoffs. Alex says the loser will go to Oktoberfest. All right, hear me out. Here's why I think that Madrid Bravos, who are currently 5-1 and have the 4th seed, 2nd in the or 3rd in the West. Here's the rest of their schedule. And Matt, tell me I'm crazy after this. Here's the rest they got. They play Paris this weekend. They play Cologne. They play Hamburg. They play Frankfurt. They play Paris again. Then they play Hamburg. Like I said, they're currently at 5-1. I think they're going to lose to Paris this weekend. And we'll see when we do the pick'ems a little bit later. I'm thinking Cologne is actually going to beat Madrid in 2 weeks. I watched their first game very closely in Cologne. There we go, Maxie. There's the graphic. Here we go. Now I'm going off. All right, everybody listen up. Cologne is going to beat Madrid in 2 weeks. Madrid is going on a 2-game slide right here. Cologne is a team that looked very, very good last week against the Frankfurt Galaxy. And the Frankfurt Galaxy are better Frankfurt Galaxy, I think, than the Madrid Bravos stomped all over a couple weeks ago because they have Matthew McKay now, who did go for about 400 yards of total offense, looked good, was a real catalyst, of course, threw a pick and had some bad decisions. But overall, I think he makes their team better. All right, they'll beat Hamburg. But then, like I just said, the Frankfurt Galaxy, who have struggled, they are going to beat Madrid as well in the second half of the season. It's going to be an entirely new Frankfurt team with Matthew McKay. I think they're going to finally find their footing here. They're going to play Paris again and lose like they're going to this weekend, and then they'll beat Hamburg. But this is going to put them at a 7-5, and I think puts them on the cusp of falling out of the playoff conversation. Matt, talk to me. How crazy am I? Chat?
Yeah, you've lost the plot, I reckon. I think you might have lost the plot. you can argue a Paris win.
Push back.
You respectfully. You can argue a Paris win. Fair enough. You can argue 2 Paris wins. Fair enough. They're a very good team.
Okay.
Cologne, I'm not so sure because I know we have Jalen Embry who's just been announced as out, so that's tough. That's a tough void to fill, but they do still have a good defense. And Isaiah Weed, although legalize it was his MVP slogan this week, hasn't been the most consistent passer in the league. The Galaxy are kind of a mess. So I might have to call you. I'm not usually one to call out craziness in such an obscure way. But I think you might have been sectioned into this crazy area at the moment. I think it's rather absurd.
A little bit. I'm on my tinfoil hat shit right now.
Yeah. I mean, that'll be a 2 and 4 finish, right? To the season after starting 5-1.
Yeah,
possible, but like if I was to bet 10 quid on that, I reckon I'd probably get about 150 back. I don't think it's too common of an outcome. I think they're just too good, man, and they're getting some of the Barcelona Dragons in as well. Like they've just improved from what we just said about them not having depth.
That's true. You know what? Those are fair points, and they're going to add some more depth and talent to get basically all of the Spanish depth here. I don't know, man. There's something. That Cologne team, and maybe it's just because I'm so excited about good defensive play. Bijan Harris last week, he's a catalyst for game-changing plays. He damn near won that game against Frankfurt last week. And then Frankfurt is a mess. They are absolutely a mess. But Matthew McKay, although not incredibly consistent, I do think he kind of has the ability to break open a game. And I could see him, when they play the Madrid Bravos the second time. The first time the Madrid Bravos in the Frankfurt Galaxy played, they played with a backup German quarterback and then an injured Luke Sorotka. I think this would be a different situation when they play. That's sort of my logic when I'm coming at this. And, I did say on Monday, I got the Madrid Bravos on fraud alert. I'm going to have the whole country of Spain after him right now. Guys, I love the Madrid Bravos. I'm so excited about this franchise and what it is doing, especially first year, putting Spanish football on the map. I don't know. For some reason, Matt, I'm not fully buying it.
You're closer to Spain than I am, so you can have that heat. I'm not that mess with that fan base. I don't know, man. I think that might be a hot take.
We maybe we'll leave it at that. That's why it is called Now's Conspiracy Corner. And I don't necessarily condone what I just said. It is just a sort of a conspiracy that I'm lofting out there. So I don't necessarily claim it. I'll claim that hard if it ends up happening. But if I look like an idiot, I'm gonna I'm gonna replay this part and deny that I actually claim all of this. But I think
good analysts do,
right. That's what we do. You gotta take a position and then you gotta deny it when you're wrong. There you go.
Perfect.
All right, there we go. That's Now's Conspiracy Corner. Perhaps a segment that we will do again here if I am not fired for my imbecile football analysis. All right, let's get into some serious football talk here now, Matt. The pick'ems. Let's look at week 9, the European League of Football. We got some good games this week. Maxie, if you throw up that graphic that you so beautifully. Oh, never mind. Here, this one's also beautiful. Let's look at these pick'ems here. That's the one I wanted. I always love those ones. That one, you get to see all the branding put next to each other. It looks good.
Beautiful.
Okay. Maxie, if you want, you can go back to the other graphic there that shows the fan picks. First game, the only Saturday game that we have this weekend, the Milano Seamen, the rematch against the Fehervar Enthroners, going to be played this time in Hungary. I will be broadcasting this game. Everybody tune in. I'll be spewing some more conspiracies in my broadcast. Matt, thoughts on this one, and who do you got?
It should be a good game. I think it could be a back and forth. Last time was a back and forth. It was 19-14 was the final score between these two teams. And you recollected about how both of these teams are better than they were last year and how much they've improved. And Milan kind of took a little bit of a step down last week, or when they lost against the Mercs. But I'm still leaning to the Enthroners. I'm going to go against the grain. I liked what they did last game. They looked really good against Prague, really good against Prague. I know it's Prague, but still, Mangel's a bit of a low-key, he's a lot safer than I thought he would be. He's a low-key fantasy pick that could be pretty good.
Oh, there we go. And we'll get into some of your fantasy tips in a second. I love that, Matt. I am with you 100%. Obviously, the Milano Seamen coming off a loss to the Mercenaries and then a bye. They're going to be kind of a little bit rusty, I would say. The Enthroners got their first win after staying consistent with Jack Mangle all season. Him and Robitaille looked great together last week. And I love the idea of taking Jack Mangle as your fantasy quarterback this week. I'm going Enthroners as well. Both of us against the grain. We don't have the exact percentages up here, but if I'm just guesstimating based off that pie graph, it looks like 1/3 of people are going for the Enthroners and 2/3 for the Milano Seamen. So we're in the minority on that one. And Tamaz in the chat says Enthroners for sure. So we are in agreement on this one, Matt, and I'm a little bit worried that we're going to be disagreeing on the next one. The Western Conference Showdown, 2 heavyweights, 5-1 versus 5-1. Paris Musketeers versus the Madrid Bravos. Thoughts on what? Let's get a real analyst thoughts on this.
I mean, I would definitely have to call you crazy if you went and did this whole conspiracy call and I went, so Madrid are going to win. It would be definitely a different situation that we're used to. I'm gonna go for. Oh, I think you've dropped out. Oh, you're back. I'm not sure if you're here or not, but I'm gonna go anyway.
Can you
You
hear me now,
there?
Matt?
There you go. I got you. There we are. So
You got
Madrid.
me?
I'm gonna go for
All right.
Madrid. I'm gonna go for Madrid. They are the better team at the moment. I think Paris take maybe one, but this is in Spain. I think that's the big overwhelming factor for me. They are coming off a little bit fresher. They've got a little bit more confidence after beating some teams like Barcelona and the Galaxy, and it's by so much. I think that could they've rested a little bit. I think I'm going to pick them. Bit of an upset. It'll be a very close game though. This definitely isn't going to be a blowout. I think it could be quite high scoring one too.
All right, there we go. Yeah, I'm gonna stand by my crazy rant from a couple minutes ago. I am gonna go with the majority. I am a little bit surprised that it is not closer to 50-50. It's 65% of people. We got the numbers here. 65% of fans are going with the Paris Musketeers. I just feel a little bit more solid about the Musketeers. I think that even last week was a little bit sloppy, or very kind of real sloppy second half, letting the Berlin Thunder back in the game. But I think kind of that first half performance is what the Paris Musketeers really are when they're focused and locked in. The Madrid Bravos, like I said, I don't want to keep bashing on it. I haven't been incredibly impressed with any wins except for their first one against the Rhine Fire, and I've said repeatedly what my thoughts are on that one. So I'm going to go with the Paris Musketeers, and you might be having to scold me on Monday, Matt. Put me back in the line. All right, there we go. That was a Western Conference showdown. Moving back to the East, interesting rematch: Vienna Vikings versus the Berlin Thunder. The first showdown between these two was fascinating. Berlin Thunder were leading almost the entire time and then let it slip away in the final corner. Matt, thoughts on this one?
I mean, Berlin let a lot slip this season, to be fair, but I'm gonna go with Vienna. They are a better team, just built wise. I think they're gonna be able to run quite heavily on Berlin in this game. They have struggled in stopping a run. I think they're gonna have learned from their mistakes. They've seen what Berlin does and what they do in the first half. They can compare it to the second. They've got tape on show and also tape from the other games. Berlin have played obviously 8 times this year already. I think it should be quite comfortable. But with Berlin, you never really know. But I think it could be an interesting one, but I think it should be quite comfortable.
Yeah. As much as I want to just, I try to, if there's a team that I'm irrationally hating on, is the Madrid Bravos, and there's a team I'm irrationally believing in, it's been the Berlin Thunder. Because they've been in those games, and part of me wants to say this will be finally the week where they hang around in a game and are able to finish it. But no, I can't. I've been too hurt. Been too hurt by the Berlin Thunder, and I'm going with the Vienna Vikings. Just one of the best teams in the league, if not the best. You touched on it. Just all of that talent, all of that depth, and I do think that this one could be much more comfortable than the first showing of these teams. And looks like the fans are in agreement. 83% of people so far are taking the Vienna Vikings. And in the chat, real quick before we move on, the fourth down fiasco guys say, before Alex can say it, Ben VP. We can't have a ELF live show without saying the words Ben VP. All right, moving on to another rematch, an interconference game. The Wroclaw Panthers are taking the big bus trip to Southwest Germany to play the Stuttgart Surge. I'll be at this game filming on the sideline on Sunday. Matt, what are your thoughts here?
I think it should be a one-sided beatdown. I'm not going to lie. I feel like Surge coming into this one, massive favorites. They've got Riley, who's on MVP form. They've got an amazing receiver room, as we talked about earlier, how good their team is. They've already beaten them before, which is a big thing. Like, they are a great franchise. For the last 2 seasons, they've been a great franchise. And then they've also got this amazing passing offense, which Wroclaw have really, really struggled with. And we'll get to that in a minute and of why and who I'm particularly liking. But it's just, and obviously quarterback issues as well. Matty Ice has had a weekend to settle. So, the first game, he was, like we talked about before, with the quarterback changes. The offense isn't built for this new quarterback. It's built for someone else. But I think that the Surge will be able to put a lot of uncomfortability on the Vostok Panthers, and I think they should we winning this one rather comfortably as well.
Yeah. This is the Stuttgart Surge's first game of the year back in their true home stadium. Gazi Stadion is a great home environment, so they're going to be super pumped up to be playing in front of kind of the true home crowd there in Stuttgart. The first matchup between these two was a little bit close. I think a lot of that had to do with kind of the travel, and the Stuttgart Surge started out very, very sloppily, turnovers, and you could kind of see that bus ride having to be shaken off. But I'm with you on this one 100%, man. I think that the Surge are feeling a little bit, I don't want to say disappointed, but knowing their performance last week could have been a little bit better. I don't think they were in top form last week. And with this team that is so well coached and has such good culture, it's okay to have Michael Jordan, the great basketball player, said it's okay to have one bad game. But you don't have two back-to-back bad games. If you have a bad game, you respond. And this is not to say that the Surge necessarily had a bad game, but they weren't playing at their tip-top performance. And I think that they're going to be in full form here. I'm with you. Surge by a landslide. And I think, 89% of people are with us right there on that one. Okay, another Central Conference one. Helvetic Mercenaries versus the Munich Ravens, a team that I kind of touched on my conspiracy rant, the Munich Ravens sneaking their way in the second half of the season. What are your thoughts on this one?
I think this one should be another quite dominant one. I've liked Munich a little bit more every week on that defensive side, and obviously the offensive side as well. But Tyler Vienna, who is a Kiwi defensive end, he's got 10.5 tackles for loss this year, and I think he is going to be putting a lot of pressure on Carnegie. I love Carnegie. I'm a big fan. But the offensive line still ain't great. It's had improvements. Alvarez Nunes just signed, which is a good improvement. They, though, don't have great tackles. Their tackles are slower compared to Tyler, and I think that's going to be a big part of it. I think defensively, they're going to be able to control this game. They have DBs who can create turnovers as well. I favor Munich quite a lot, and I'm definitely going to go with the overwhelming majority with this, and offensively as well. Like Stanley's so back, he's so back.
Oh. I mean, dude, we said it a couple times on previous shows. Malik Stanley, I think that guy's he's just an imposing force, and I think they really that's the only guy that can kind of fill that Markel Castle sized hole that they're missing, and I think he's gonna be massive in the second half of the season. I'm with you 100%, man. I mean, we were impressed by the Mercenaries last week. Carlton Aiken got MVP, well deserved. But they're not going to be able to compete with the Munich Ravens on this one. I do not think so. I'm going with Ravens, and so are 96% of the fans so far. Okay, that was the Central Conference. Moving to the Western Conference, the Frankfurt Galaxy, who have been described on this show as a mess, kind of rightfully so,
Yep.
are playing the Rhine Fire, who seem to be hitting their stride. What do we got on this one, Matt?
Glenn Tonga, that's pretty much it. I think this could be the game that he gets the single season rushing record. He's had multiple games in a row with 3 in a row, like 3 touchdowns on the ground. He has 20. I think he needs 3 to overtake Madre is the most in a single year. I think this could be the one. They don't have a suspect defense, but their defense is susceptible to it. We saw that in the first time. Hugo Dyro's going to be doing his most as a linebacker to try and stop him doing it, but I think this is going to be another Glenn Tonga show with Jadrian being able to pick him apart. Harlan Kofi also looks healthier, and I'm so excited because Harlan Kofi is one of my favorite receivers in the league. He looks a lot better. He looks a lot more healthy. He's not just on the field to be more of a distraction. He's blocking as well, also helps with Glenn. So that they have every advantage. Galaxy have got a new quarterback in. They still don't run the damn ball in the red zone, which I've been screaming at them to do for weeks with their NFL practice called running back. But I'm going to go for Ryan Fire. I think it should be another quite convincing win.
Mark Wilson says Tunga, the Fire will win. And Fourth Down Fiasco Boy say, it's not who will win, it's how many yards does Tunga have at halftime. Glenn Tunga, obviously on an absolute historic roll. He's probably going to go for another 150. You did. Hugo, he had a great game last week, 18 tackles, an interception, was kind of in the conversation that we talked about on Monday during our MVP talk, but it's not going to be enough. Not going to be enough at all. I mean, it's Glenn Toon, got Ryan Fire. It's crazy, man. The Frankfurt Galaxy said explicitly in the offseason they built this roster so they could beat the Rhine Fire. It's been just the devil on their shoulder, the demon on their back that they just cannot shake. And it's not going to happen this week. Rhine Fire rolling, and we got a huge percentage of people say the same thing, 81%. All right, our last game, the Hamburg Sea Devils, who we talked about in the signing center, a lot of new A's, and then the Cologne Centurions. A team that's I seem to be talking on quite a bit about. That's interesting. What do we got on this one, Matt?
Legalize it, baby. I love the Cologne offense at the moment. I've been critical of the passing game. But then last couple of weeks, I was like, if you're going to run the ball, just run it over and over and over and over again until they get tired. That's what they did against the Galaxy. It worked. Cologne have proven that they're not like a bad team. They're just in an incredibly hard conference. Their defense still needs a lot of work. Like, they do have Harris, who's amazing. I would have liked to have seen Owens in that DB core as well. That's just my opinion. I would have liked to see those two get to work together. I think that could have been a formidable DB duo, but I guess we'll never know. I think that they've got a ton of momentum. That's pretty undeniable. Like, they've got a great amount of momentum. Weed's been better than people like Bronkenhurst. It's just kind of gone under the radar because he's, lost, and they've got a really hard team. Jared Alman is probably one of the most. I think he's going to be one of the most approached German running backs in this offseason. He's had a great year as he's, his former All-Star, so he's not like he's a new player on the block, but he's been great. Carlos Hill has been good at receiver as well. I think that he gives the Galaxy problems and the Hamburg Sea Devils problems, rather, with a new DB core to face someone who has spent a couple of weeks in, is a bit of a speedster and extends play, kind of Jarvis-like, kind of.
Right.
I like Cologne a lot at the moment, so I'm going to go for them to win. I think Hamburg, too many injuries, too many. They're like Frankfurt. I always get their names the wrong way around because they're so damn similar. Like everything they've done in the last few weeks with the injuries and the quarterback issues and some questionable decision making on the run game. Like, they're so similar, and I'm going to go for Cologne.
You are in the minority on this one, Matt. Only 36% of people are choosing Cologne. But man, hey, here's another one. I am. We're only opponents on one because I'm with you on this one too, man. I am a massive fan of what Cologne's doing. You mentioned Gerald Amel, and even in the last game, Emil Fuchs, who's the backup running back, he played a great game. Weed, while not incredibly accurate, doesn't have a fantastic accuracy completion rating. He makes plays, and then he also makes plays with his legs and gets first downs, keeps the drives going. I like the direction Cologne is headed in. I'm absolutely impressed. I mean, the defense obviously has some problems, but their new addition of Bijan Harris, I mean, that dude is just a defender. Not often can defenders, like if we had gambling point lines, will a defender move the points? But I think if we had that, Bijan Harris would move the line a point or two because of that big play ability. I'm with you 100%. Cologne Centurions are going to have what is apparently an upset. So there we have it. That is our pick'ems. And lastly, before we let you guys go, we got a couple minutes left here to remind you to set your fantasy rosters before Friday at midnight to compete. Get on that top 10 leaderboard. Alex Malchow was on there, or he was climbing his way up there. Actually, Jamal was on that a couple weeks ago, at least in the top 10. Matt, final segment, new segment. Matt's fantasy tips, or Matt's fantasy advice. That's a real picture from Matt lecturing at Oxford. He does a American football lecture where he talks about ELF fantasy. So it's a real picture. You can tell. We're lucky to get that. So, Matt, give us a couple of fantasy tips for people setting their fantasy teams before tomorrow at midnight.
Oh, can you imagine me teaching at Oxford? Jeez. But maybe one day. So, my first one, I'm going to go with Kerry Majarian, running back from Vienna. They're playing Berlin. Berlin have a passing defense, which is very good. They have rushes. They've struggled with the run. They're going to be able to run down their throats. They're going to be respecting Reese Horn and Torres so much. They give Kerry the middle. I think you'd be able to take advantage of that. I'll keep it brief and teacher-like with the pen and all.
There you go.
Next one, Mangle. They're playing they're playing Milan. Milan don't have a very good passing defense either. It's going to be higher scoring, I think, than last time. Mangel's on a bit of form. Yeah, he's got a little bit of line help with McCluskey coming in from Barcelona as a tight end. Great blocker.
True.
So he's going to be instrumental to that. I think he's going to have a big role. So I'd like him. Surge receivers, pretty much any of them, but I'm going to go for Gaia. And the ELF, Maxi put up the graphics of the all-time receiver leader stats. I think Gaia's going to try and go for it this game. He's playing a division rival. This is, as you can see there, second all-time. I'm not sure if he's going to catch Jean at the moment, but the touchdown ones, I know that he's very close to Reese Horn. He's one below. And I think, there you go, one below. I think he could have an argument of trying to go for 2 to become the all-time receiver leader touchdown. He's 22 years old. How crazy is that? He's already the league's receiver leader. And then last one, it's Glenn, because it's Glenn. He's averaging 3 touchdowns a game in the last few games, so kind of hard to take him out. It's not an unusual pick, as some might say, but you can't take him out. You can't take out a guy who's on MVP form, has 1,200 yards. And this could be on a division rival the day he breaks a single game receiver rushing touchdown record in a single season. Both of those last picks going for records, which I hope to see. So it could be a very historical weekend.
There we go. Some very, very good tips. People, this is free. A lot of people would pay a lot of money for this advice. You being in the chat here right now on this show, getting it for free. What a lucky time to be alive. ELF Week 9 coming up. Got some great games. Guys, that is going to be our show. Everyone in the chat, thanks so much for hanging out with us, giving your input. Matt, awesome as always. Love talking ELF ball with you, brother.
Always. Every time. It's great. Every time. It's such a blast. It's great.
Hell yeah. Hey, everyone, tune in Saturday on the Game Pass. I'm going to be broadcasting that's Enthroner's Milan game. And Matt just said to take Jack Mangle possibly on your fantasy team. So tune into that one. And we will see all of you back here on Monday to see if I look smart or really, really dumb. All right, everybody. See you next time.
They're up.